Hey guys, welcome back to episode 8. We've got a lot that has transpired since Off-Road Expo. We didn't film last month, sorry, we missed a month. It's kind of hard to keep up because we're so busy, but let's get into all the changes that we got. 69 Barracuda was here last time. That's over, the cage is done, mini tub job's done, everything's done. That's over at paint, getting the cage painted and getting undercoated in the wheel tubs. The Bronco that was here on the dyno, that's left back to the customer, running great, so that's done. Mike Doman's 56 Chevy that was here, that's in wiring. We wrapped that up and got everything done on our end as far as fluid transfer lines, exhaust system, stuff like that. So now we have all new projects, well, not all new, we have some new projects in the shop, so let's go over what we got and what we're building right now. 69 Camaro, I don't believe this was here in the last episode. So what we're doing to this thing is, this guy was already building it and he ended up passing away, unfortunately. So his son inherited it, so he employed us to get the rest of this thing together and get it running and driving. We're only doing drivetrain, suspension, stuff like that. And then it's gonna go off to get all the trim done, upholstery, stuff like that. But as you can see, 4-link rear suspension, not sure whose brand it is, it was already on. We plumbed the brake system, we built the exhaust system, which is here on the ground. We're getting ready to install it. Drive shafts ready to go in. Put the manual transmission in, it has a, I think it's a TKO, it's not a 6-speed, it's a Tremec 5-speed, so I'm not exactly sure what model it is off the top of my head. Put the bell housing on, got the run out centered on that, had to use offset dowel pins so that that's done correctly. Engine is a ZZ 502. We ran it on a run stand. Actually, we have another engine on the run stand right now, but we have a little run stand we run all our engines on in case there's oil leaks or problems or issues or anything like that. So we had to do some deciphering because the guy bought a lot of parts and we're not sure what parts were what. So we had to kind of go back and figure out what works with what as far as his timing chain cover, oil pan, things like that. But anyways, we got the engine running, runs good in the car. I'll let this thing down, Ryan, so you can see the top side of it. Okay, so top side, we got, we're just hooking everything up. So we built a bunch of stuff for it, like upper radiator hose, got all the heater lines and the fuel system done. Power steering lines, we like to heat jacket everything with silicone heat jacketing, especially these lines, they run right over the headers. So, I mean, they're far away from it, but you know, heat rises, so we want to make sure the fuel lines stay cool. AC system, radiator installed, battery tray, did a different master cylinder. He had a booster on it. There's not a lot of room for a booster with the big block in it. I think they make a small diameter one, but I don't like the way it actually works. I'd rather have actual manual brake system in it. Z-bar linkage, some of the brake lines were already done, but we got the brake lines wrapped up and finished. So we're just about ready to put fluids in this thing, fired up, bleed the brakes, make sure everything's good. And at that point, he could at least drive it on and off a trailer. We also figured out wheel and tire fitment for him. So the fitment is, let's see, we got, I think we have 17 by 8s in the front is what we're gonna run. 17 by 9.5 in the rear. It doesn't have a mini tub or anything. That's the max that we can get wheel-wise in a stock wheel tub. And we're gonna run a 275 40 17 on the rear and a I think a 245 40 17 on the front. So anyway, so yeah, wheels and tires. I think he's gonna order Budnick wheels, so it should be a nice, clean, fun driver. The ZZ 502, I think it makes like 580 horsepower and close to 600 foot-pounds of torque. So should be a good tire shredder, fun car to drive around. Datsun 510. I know everybody wants Datsun 510 updates. Well, not everybody, but the 510 guys do. Not a lot, as always, because, you know, the Willys takes precedent, but we do a little bit here and there. Sometimes I, you know, come out here at night and mess around. And so actually the other night I got all this bracing in. We decided to ditch the rear struts. We're gonna do cantilever, bell cranked rear suspension. So the coilover shocks will sit fore and aft in here. And then we'll have like a dual bell crank system that comes in and operates the shock. So got some of the framework done back here, got the fuel cell designed and in the computer, so that will be fired off to laser, and then we'll start on that pretty soon. But what we're doing now is we're just taking measurements as we have time, and we will build the bulkheads that hold the bell crank assembly for the cantilever, like the rocker pivot up here, the differential, upper lower control arms. And after we get those bulkheads in, I can finish the rear section of the cage, and then this thing will actually be a roller. So maybe by next episode we'll have that stuff done. So let's get into the Pantera. So 71 Pantera, I know that there hasn't been a lot done in the past episodes. We're finally on this thing. So we have the 180-degree headers built and most of the exhaust system wrapped up. what we're doing, Ryan, is where the AC condenser went right here, there was like a grill right here so that the AC condenser can breathe. We're actually moving the condenser up front. I believe I've mentioned that in previous episodes, so that it can get fresh, cool air up front and the AC actually works correctly. And then we're going to panel this off. We're actually going to curve these down and we'll actually bring them into one single exit. And so we'll French that all in, and that should look really bitchin' how the exhaust exits out the middle here. And then where the factory muffler locations are, these cutouts for the factory muffler, we're actually going to move these over a little bit to widen it, and I'll just build a nice, simple, clean diffuser. Not a big giant one, but just something subtle that looks really cool and nice and trick. So, and then as soon as the exhaust system's wrapped up, we'll pull the engine out. We haven't run this on the stand yet to make sure we don't have any issues. So we'll actually run it on the stand, but the cool thing is we'll get to run it on the stand with the actual exhaust system that it goes with the car. So the client gets to hear what it's gonna sound like. So that should be pretty rad. We got the roll cage all tacked in. I don't believe that was done last time. So the cage is ready to weld. We're gonna have to cut the roof off to weld the cage. We'll weld the roof back on, and then we'll start on suspension and wheels and tires. So 156 Chevy leaves, another comes in. So we have Mark Hines 56 Chevy gasser. Don't remember if this was in any of our previous episodes, but this thing's been in paint for quite a while. So it's back from paint. Mark wanted to kind of stay traditional with this thing and do a big metal flake paint job like they did in the 60s is when they were building gassers back then. So you can see the paint job. I'm not 100% sure exactly what color it is, but it definitely has big flake in it, and it's super pretty. Travis Sylvester got this thing really super straight, did a killer paint job on it, gapped all the doors, trunk and hood, like all the gaps are really trick and good. Painted the inside lizard skin, heat resistant lizard skin on everything, so you can see inside here. You can see the cage is done. We still got to put our plates where the cage mounts bolt, where the chassis mount outriggers are for the cage. I'll show you all that underneath. And then we got the wheel tubs all coated on the inside. So this thing's all coated, done, ready for assembly. All these parts are on the ground right here, Ryan, because we are going to polish and sand all this stuff super nice so that we can send it out and get it chromed, because that's kind of what they did back in the day, was everything was chrome. So we're going to kind of pay homage to that. But let me take this thing up. You can see underneath it. So we still have it on the dolly. We haven't taken it off the dolly yet. Once we start hanging suspension, we will. Ryan, watch your head on this thing as you're filming down here. But underside's all painted. We didn't do the super heavy flake underneath. It was kind of a moot point. Chassis all cleaned up. We used the stock frame in this. We just modified it for the 4-link system and where we hang our fuel cell. And I think all these outriggers right here that hold the cage that bolt to the body. So it's still NHRA legal if you have it bolt on with a larger area than 6x6, which we've achieved that. So super strong outriggers for the cage. You can see the cross members notch for the exhaust and the 4-link bracket. Our trans cross member we got here, Ryan. Our exhaust goes through the trans cross member. One of the cool things is this actually has fender well exit headers, which is super cool, but it has a exhaust cutout. So you'll actually be able to run the factory, or not factory, but the exhaust that we made run fore and aft on the car, like a full length exhaust system. But as soon as you hit the button for the cutouts, it'll exit out the fender well. So I'm excited to show you the headers and the engine and all that stuff for this thing. It's pretty radical. So this thing's gonna make quite a bit of power. Manual transmission, should be pretty fun and gnarly to drive at the track. So gonna be a fun car. Some of the things that have transpired since Off-Road Expo. We've sold the Mini Ranger, so that's gone. F100, we're off of it right now. We have a bunch of stuff going on, so we worked something out with the client because he had another project that he's trying to finish up. So we pulled off that, and we'll get back on it when the Willys leaves for paint. We can get back on the F100. 49 Willys, we have gotten a lot done since Off-Road Expo. Came back from Expo and just got right into it again. Some of the things that we have accomplished. Hey Nick, you wanna go over some of this stuff with me? Yeah, we'll operate some of this stuff for you guys, but we have the light bar, the rear light wing, and the light bar finished up. We have the tailgate on now, and the box built for storage in the back. The AGM jack is mounted. Bedsides are built. What else we got? Corvette latch is done. Facade, it's kind of like a facade miniature version of the factory fender. We brought it in super close just so the tire can't take it out. And the bedside we had to make from hand by scratch. This is an aluminum bedside. What we wanted to do is we have a Bailey, 6-foot magnetic brake. One of the reasons we purchased that brake is from the factory, they did it in steel, but it had, you know, your bedside face, then it had a 45-degree bend, approximate 45-degree bend, and then they rolled the end of this down and spot welded it along here. So on our brake, we could actually do a section about probably what, 24 inches long, max?
Yeah, about 2 feet.
But we can't do the, what, 58 inches that this thing ended up being?
Yeah.
So we called around everywhere. We tried to source somebody that had the tooling to do it. We couldn't find anybody. So plan B, we actually got an aluminum tube, and then we just welded it to our bedside that we made. We made the brake, and then we actually welded a piece underneath here just to make it look factory. So it looks like it has that full fold return flange and it's spot welded underneath. So I don't know if you can capture underneath here, Ryan, but it has that too. So once it's painted, it'll look like a factory steel bedside, just shrunk down, but pretty trick that it's all aluminum. You can see the top side here. You can see where we welded this tube here. Well, you can't see where we welded this tube here. You kind of see the end of the weld right here, and that's the point of it, is that you can't tell it's been welded, which is pretty trick and neat. So Nick, let's go over this tailgate. You want to go to the tailgate?
Sure.
So this box actually for storage, we'll have a tool bag in here. I think we're going to mount the AGM jack pad in here. What else are we putting? The jack's on the outside, so we don't have to worry about that. So basically just tools, and there should be room for a small ice chest or something like that. We're actually going to put sliders so that a drawer slides out right here. The reason being is the tailgate is just, it's not a double box like in the bed of a tailgate of some of the newer vehicles. It's just one single piece of sheet metal. So if you're working on this or setting stuff on that and you put little dents in it, you'll see it on the outside. So we're going to put some heavy duty industrial hinges here, and we'll actually be able to slide the drawer out so that you could work on that area. All your stuff actually comes out to here. So that'll help protect the tailgate. We used Corvette C6 latches to latch the tailgate. The cool thing about that is it's electronic, so you can pop them electronically, but it's also redundant as it has a cable mechanism for it as well. So, and then there's 2 cable positions, correct, Nick? Is there 3? Oh, there's 3 cable positions. Yeah. So you could come in from different angles with your cable, which is super helpful for us to try to hide stuff. So you can pop it electronically, or you could use the cable if, say, you had a dead battery or something like that. And then this foot, this little pad right here, actually seals against the Corvette gasket right here to help keep dust and dirt and crap and stuff out of here. And then we machine these stainless little pieces right here. What would you call these little strike pin? Yes, thanks, Nick. This strike pin for the Corvette latch, it's countersunk on this side and drilled and tapped, so we could make another one if it ever wore out, which I doubt if it ever would, but at least it's serviceable and replaceable. So once you latch this thing, it's solid, like doesn't rattle, super solid. I think it's more solid than my Denali tailgate actually. So. Anyways, yeah, and then Nick cleaned all this up, filled all this in. It didn't have this. It was kind of open on the edge right here. So we just wanted to clean it up and make it look super nice. We're pivoting off of these rod ends right here instead of out here. Normally I had to pivot out here. So Nick pushed a tube in here, drilled it and tapped it. So the bolt just goes in here through the heim and captures it into the centerpiece right here. That's what it pivots on. We also put a solid one here so that if you ever hit it with anything, it doesn't dent and ding easy. And then when we build the boxes that come out here that hold the tail lights, it actually has like a little piece that comes around here from the factory, and that's what it pivot on. We're still going to put that piece on, so it's kind of a facade piece. It looks like it's pivoting from there, just looks factory and OEM. I mean, this thing's obviously not factory and OEM, but we're just trying to give those little details that make it look super cool, and it's still a Jeep. We're trying to keep it as much Jeep as possible. Another cool thing that we did is the client remembers this particular vehicle. He grew up driving this as a kid on his grandpa's ranch. So he always thought that it had an Overland Willys tailgate, which it didn't, but in his memory it did. So to pay homage to that, we decided, okay, well, we'll laser cut one, put it on here, you know, spot weld it from the backside so you don't see any welds on it or anything, and it kind of gives it some depth instead of it being bead rolled into it or stamped from the factory. So once we had that on there, we decided to take it a step further. Now we're going to bolt from the backside. We had this billet Overland Willys symbol machined. So this thing will get Cerakoted black. We're not going to tell you the color of the actual vehicle yet, but the trim pieces are going to be black. So this will actually bolt here, give it even more depth. So just a cool, fun trick thing to do. It kind of resembles what in his memory it was. All right, well, we'll pop the tailgate, show you how that works. And then also we'll have 2 more of this, the same C6 Corvette latches that we have on the tailgate. We'll actually have those for the actual spare tire trunk mechanism. So once you pop those, this thing will automatically go up. So that's going to be kind of cool. But yeah, you want to pop that, Nick?
Sure.
We've got our mock-up battery and our power probe. Yeah, I couldn't remember the name of it. Yeah, I got it. So pretty neat how it just, pretty cool. I like it. And I think we'll do some sort of a clean stop for the tailgate so that, you know, it just stays flat and doesn't swing all the way down. We still need to build some sort of a back bumper right here as well, and a license plate holder. So that's pretty much wrapped up. We got the lid to the box and the gasket to do here, and that'll wrap up the box and the hinges, and we're just about done with the back end of this thing besides the bumper. So we'll show you how the light bar works, how it pivots around the actual light wing. So the light wing has those LED lights in there. The two outer ones are the yellow dust lights that we like to use, the ambers that we use, just so someone behind you, if it's super dusty and they're on the trail behind you, they can see you ahead. And then the third one is a third brake light. And then underneath there's two work lights, which you don't need them during the daytime when this thing's stowed down here. So go ahead and put it up, Nick, and we'll show them those lights and how that works. Yeah. So now you can see on the light wing, we have those two facing kind of at a 45-degree angle. Those are work lights. And then we also have work lights. You can see one in the center of those holes, you know, for the supports for the lights. We decided to put, you know, KC cyclones in there so that you could actually aim those work lights as needed. And then obviously you can aim the light bar as you're driving. Come up to a hill, you can aim it to the top of the hill. Like, it's just, you can fine tune it as you're driving. That's super neat. So all that will be controlled from inside the cab. And then we have stops. And the linear actuator has micro switches internal, so it actually stops where it needs to stop. But we also put stops here just so it's not bouncing, and it's super rigid actually when it's down all the way. You don't want to hear that thing rattling. Just another cool, neat feature. You know, we get to exercise our fun ideas on this thing, so pretty trick. We're gonna go over underneath. We have the scoop done that brings air from the front under the subfloor and up to the radiator area, so that's all done and on. And there's a bunch of other little things underneath that have been wrapped up. So I'm gonna turn it over to Nick, and he's gonna go over all that stuff with you.
Let's check it out. All right, so on the 49 Willys, one of our biggest issues with this thing has been packaging. It's very tight confines and not a wide front end on it to put a lot of coolers up front. So we've got them spaced throughout the vehicle with a lot of different aluminum scoops to help try and suck as much air as we can into the coolers and heat exchangers just to get temperatures where we like them. So we'll start with the front. I think I might have shown this before, but we have a AC condenser in the front, and then followed by two heat exchangers, one here for the intercooler. There is a scoop that you see here on each side, sucks from below the fender and behind the headlight, and just curls the air, you know, into the heat exchanger. And then afterwards is another scoop that separates this hot air from the condenser and also separates those two airs from the air intake box here. The next scoop we have is same on each side, but it's for our power steering cooler here and our oil cooler on the other side. Again, they just grab an oncoming air, you know, whoever get behind the shocks and through the coil over, scooping it, hooking it in. They have electric fans as well, but any fresh air we can get to them is a bonus. Here's the other scoop here for the oil cooler. And underneath you'll see a lot of different panels with mesh in them. Behind these panels there's actually some divisions that help separate exhaust heat from the firewall and from other scoops we have going to the radiators in the rear. So there's a little bit of segregation going on up here to keep things, all the temperatures where we like them. So down here, this bottommost panel you'll see here only feeds to the exhaust and the headers. And that's separated, that rides underneath the rocker panel the rest of the way out the vehicle. Every other piece of mesh you see up here is the engine bay and engine compartment. And that'll flow through the trans tunnel out the back of the vehicle. This section here, this scoop, will actually put oncoming air directly onto the floor below the feet of the driver and passenger. To help keep temperatures cooler, our firewall is actually two layers, two steel layers back to back with air gap between them. Help keep as much exhaust heat out of the cab as possible. The oncoming air will help big time with that too, just help disperse the heat. And it'll actually suck underneath the chassis under the subfloor of this vehicle, using the floor and the skid plate and the trans tunnel as a ducting to get all the way up to the rear radiator in the back. So we can take a look underneath. I can kind of show you what all those ducts look like, and we'll check them out right now. Okay, so the 5 air channels on this vehicle, the center is the trans tunnel engine compartment. It's pretty big, gives air gap around all the drivetrain, lets the air flow from the front to the back, try to get all the hot air in here out of the vehicle as fast as we can, keep things moving. The next one to the outside on, one on driver and passenger will be this one here and this one here. These will feed the radiator. They suck in that last scoop by the firewall on each side and will go all the way up a plenum behind us. The furthest outside, if you pan to your left, will be underneath the rocker where the exhaust is. And that one will remain open, the atmosphere on the outside of the vehicle to help get as much oncoming air and prevent the heat from building up there. We're also going to wrap the exhaust in insulation and probably insulate this shroud here as well, or this steel here, just to try and keep all the temperature zones separate. So if you work our way back, you can see where our plenum starts here. You know, if you can almost imagine a sand car hood but upside down, was kind of the vibe we were going for. It's cleared out in the center for two reasons. One is the drive line, obviously. It's got to clear all the way up bump and articulate in the rear end. And two, all the trans-tunnel and engine bay heat comes flying through here, giving it an open zone to escape. So we blocked it off on all four sides using the floor of the vehicle as the top layer, and then built wall on each side and a floor to this, and these will scoop up to the radiator, which is also assisted by fans. We're also trying to get as much oncoming as we can. This thing all fastens in via Zeus buttons, which are quarter turn fasteners. They're pretty handy. It's all these countersunk fasteners you see here. So 3/16 Allen wrench, quarter turn, they pop loose, and that's all it takes to get these on and off. We've set this up where this is one section here, and it goes into a receiver on each side. That way we can get the ducts further forward and make this piece a little bit smaller and easier to get out of the vehicle. It's a little tricky, but it does go. So all the aluminum work you see on the underside of the vehicle, from the trans tunnel all the way up here to the scoops, was done by Aiden Geiger, who's our newest fabricator here. And this has been pretty fun to watch him learn as he goes and really start to kind of almost master this craft of shaping aluminum and visualizing the different planes and shapes in his head before he goes from concept to reality. So we've designed this thing as modular, so most of these will come out, a lot of them click into each other. So all the panels you see here will have tabs that break down and become the Zeus fastener tab for the scoop. That way, if we pull the scoop and have to service anything above this, there's not a bunch of tabs coming off of the chassis. It's just the ones that are close by to the chassis points, but nothing coming out here to grab. Just makes things a little easier to work on with less pieces of steel sticking out at you. This piece itself is 5 different pieces. The floor is one piece, each outside wall is a piece, the inside wall is a piece, and this little U-bend here is a piece. Everything's been bead rolled for the pattern you see here, and then we run it through the bead roller with a half tank roll on each piece to start the curl. There's a weld seam along these radius edges the whole way through, inside and out, and then we come back with a file and a block to really give it that smooth look. You know, you can only get so far with a grinder, but for a real nice smooth finish, it's all by hand, sanding blocks and files. So here, this is the passenger side of the air ducts for the radiator, right in here. This is basically underneath our subfloor of the Willys, and we've got all these aluminum sheet metal pieces that have been bead rolled and fit in here to separate the air duct from the transmission bay. The biggest thing about this kind of stuff is you can make one big sexy panel on this thing, which is great, but in this situation we've got this AccuSump, which helps maintain oil pressure in the oil pan. It's got plumbing lines that are always full of oil, and so what you want to avoid is having to disconnect any AM plumbing lines or wiring or anything of the sort. So we've gone with the 3 individual pieces on here that all click together via Zeus fasteners, and they can come out without having to disconnect any of these lines or hoses. Takes a little bit with the paper templates to figure it out, take your time, but it's worth it in the end when you're not cracking open and draining oil and fluid just to take something apart and service something real quick. All right, so last week our wiring expert, Jax Motorsports, came up to go over the layout of the electronics on this vehicle, as far as where wiring's gonna run, Canon plugs need to go, and so forth. Most of the computers are housed inside the console here, with the Holley computer housed back here in this panel. We built this as a wire chase to run wires from the rear firewall up the console all the way to the front firewall without being exposed. And we've added this panel here to help protect where the battery cables will go through the floor and the rear chassis harness via Canon plugs. All these panels you see here are actually lifted away from the body about an inch, and they give room to run also more wiring up for the dome lights that we're going to install, the radio antenna, and get to the back of the light wing. So all stuff that we planned ahead for a while back, just to leave room to chase wires without being seen and keep it protected. So something to keep in mind when building these things.
Is it done yet?
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah, because if we tighten that down right there, that's how much advance I had it. Because that should line up with number 1 spark plug. Yeah. So plugs here, we're firing here. Okay. Okay.
Okay, so while we were filming today, we got a good opportunity to come over to the upholstery shop. Rudy called me and he needed me to make a slight modification to the instrument cluster. So I thought, what the heck, let's take advantage of that and come see how the 69 Camaro looks. Hey, Rudy.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you.
So I came to grab that instrument cluster and then see how this bad boy's coming along. If we can pop that out, I'll take that with me. How's this thing look? Yeah, this thing's looking good. Oh yeah, that looks good. Oh yeah, dude, trunk looks killer, Rudy. Man, that's looking awesome. Package tray looks good. Oh, you're working on the rear sail panels right now? Heck yeah, that looks killer, dude. That looks good. And then all the seats are in, the back seats are in. That looks good. Seats look good, door panels look good. Man, you're almost there, huh? Just about ready to wrap this bad boy up. All right, guys, so that wraps it up here. I'm gonna head back to the shop. Hopefully everybody had a Merry Christmas and a good New Year's. That's it for episode 8. Man, looking forward to bringing you a bunch more content next year. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you can, and shoot me some questions if you got any. Happy to answer them. Thanks, guys.